Welcome to the ONS podcast with your host, Linnea Jacobson.
Good day, community. It's the ONS podcast brought to you by our partners at Face to Face Academy. For those who are tuning in for the first time, ONS stands for Office of Neighborhood Safety. I'm your host, Linnea Jacobson, and I am part of the ONS team. This podcast was created for departments like ours and community organizations to connect you to alternative public safety measures, programs, and your local growth and healing opportunities. St. Paul is a tapestry blanket that includes people from many nations. We consist of many identities. That includes different backgrounds, faith, ethnicities, shades, shapes, sizes, love interests, and pronouns. With everything that is currently brewing under the Trump administration, we think it is very important to address the crisis we find ourselves in as it pertains to the safety of our immigration population. Today we have attorney Edmundo Lijo from our city attorney's office here in St. Paul, who comes from our Civil Division's Immigration Legal Services Department. He is here to give us insight on what is happening and resources our friends, family, and neighbors can take advantage of, protecting their resident status, continuing to call Minnesota home. Welcome, Edmundo.
Thank you, Linnea. Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to be here today.
Take 30 seconds and tell us about yourself.
Sure. I'm an attorney with the Civil Division of the City Attorney's Office, and I run the Immigrant and Refugee Program for the city. It's a program that was actually established at the same time, actually in the same ordinance as the Office of Neighborhood Safety, and our mission is to provide opportunities and information and context for immigrants and immigrant communities that live in St. Paul.
Thank you. That's awesome. So, Edmundo, I have some icebreaker questions.
Sure.
And I remember just some things from what we talked about, just like conversations we've had in the past. So, best vegan spot in Minnesota to eat?
My house. I do a lot of my own cooking because I'm a plant-based guy and I do it because of my health. I'm a diabetic and it helps keep me healthy. So, I'm always worried about what if people put in there.
Yeah. My husband is a diabetic too. He's a type 1. And he was asking me, well, who are you going to be interviewing today? And I was telling him about you, and I was telling him, then I started telling him about the vegan thing.
Yeah. It's really sad. There used to be a really good place in the Skyway, and then COVID hit, and it was really close to the office. Now it's gone. So that was my favorite place.
What is your favorite color?
Blue.
Okay, that was easy.
Yeah.
If your family had to describe you, would they refer to you as Mr. Fix-It or Mr. Call Somebody and I'll take care of it and pay for it?
If we're talking about mechanical things, it's like he'll call somebody, we'll pay for it. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about everybody else's business, it's Mr. Fix-It.
Okay. Let's jump into these questions. Tell us exactly what it is you do for the city of St. Paul.
I am a legal advisor to the city, to the mayor's office, city council, and all departments in the city about anything that has to do with immigration. Okay. Immigration law, immigration policy, immigration enforcement.
Okay.
I run the Immigrant and Refugee Program, which also is a resource for immigrant and refugee communities in the city for information about housing, jobs, legal services, and anything they might need, and anything that could help them to find opportunities or develop opportunities, not only to prosper and grow, but to contribute. Because, we hear so much these days about how immigrants are coming and they're criminals and they're doing all these bad things, when the truth is most immigrants are here because they're fleeing persecution or violence or they're looking to improve their life. And they come and they want to contribute. They don't want to take, they want to contribute. They want to be part of the community. So we really are looking for ways to help people in the community to contribute.
When did you first know that you wanted to do immigration law?
That is an interesting question. I've been, as I think about it, I think it happened organically. I don't think it was like something I decided this is what I'm going to do. I am the son of immigrants. My dad immigrated from Spain, and then my mom, her mom immigrated from Mexico, and her dad was from Puerto Rico. So immigration was always around me from the time I was born. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, where there are a lot of immigrant communities, a lot of different communities passing through. When I was really little, my parents were always trying to help somebody else that had just come. So I was always around immigrants. But I also come from a family that was all union. My entire family was in a union. Okay. My grandmother was a garment worker. My grandfather was in the AFL-CIO. My dad and his brothers were all Teamsters. So I decided to go to law school and thought, I'm going to be a labor lawyer. I'm going to work for a labor union. My first law clerk job was with the Hennepin County Public Defender's Office, doing criminal work. And then at the time, there was all these influx of people coming in who got arrested, but they had what's called immigration detainers. And no one at that time knew what that was, how to deal with it. So, the lawyers kept asking me, Edmundo, go research this. What's this immigration detainer all about? And I just kind of fell into it, and I started doing it, and it just felt natural. My first job out of law school, I worked for a law firm that did about 50% of their practice was immigration work, and
it just kind of fell into it, and you became like the expert. So you're like, why not?
Yeah, well, I loved it. I love the people. I love immigrants. I love the energy they bring to the community. I love the fact that they're big on family. They're big. They might be big on faith, regardless of what their faith is. But they have a faith, and they live it, and it's just beautiful.
I think one of the things that I noticed that I really admire about our immigration population is that they're so family oriented and they all help each other. And I think that's one of the things that some of us as firstborn Americans take advantage of and that we lose sight of is actually helping each other. You know what I mean? We've kind of been put in this pot of where we've got to climb the ladder and we're stepping on each other and we're just out for self and we don't have time to look back because we're too busy trying to get ahead. And one of the things that I notice about our immigrants, they are always there, they're helping each other. They want to help each other prosper. It's just we are a group and we're going to do this together. And that's one of the things that I really, really do admire about our immigrants. We can learn a lot. Tell us about your day-to-day work and what it used to be like and what your day-to-day work is like now and how it's changed since we went into this crisis. And I use the word crisis because the definition of crisis is a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. And I believe this is what some people are finding themselves in right now.
Sure. I got hired at the city attorney's office in 2019 during the first Trump administration. And I was hired because two very big incidents occurred that seriously impacted our immigrant and refugee communities here in St. Paul. First, we have a very large Southeast Asian population living in St. Paul. Many of those folks came as refugees, and when they brought their children with them, many of those children, as many kids do, got in trouble as kids and may have done things that were criminal acts that could get them deported. However, they couldn't be deported because the countries they came from, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, would not take them back. So what happened was they would get these deportation orders and then they'd go and live their lives. They would, they'd gotten in trouble as kids, as juveniles, but then they turned their lives around, built businesses, got jobs, got educations, got, built families. They became part of the community. But then when President Trump was first elected during his first term, he entered into what was called repatriation agreements with all these countries. And now these countries started taking people back. So they started picking up folks who had old orders that some of them were as old as 30 years old. And basically some of them were like grandparents and they were trying to deport them and they were deporting people back.
I saw a documentary about that. Okay.
Yeah. So that was the first kind of crisis that occurred. The second thing that happened was there was a very public arrest by ICE of an individual in the courthouse. And it sent shockwaves through the community, it sent shockwaves through the legal community because if people are going to get arrested at the courthouse, they're going to stop coming to the courthouse. They're not going to come to their hearings. They're not going to come, they're not going to report a domestic assault. If they know if I go to the courthouse or my partner goes to the courthouse, there's a chance they're going to get picked up by ICE. So Mayor Carter was very, very worried about what was going on. He saw that these incidences, both the deportations and the arrest at the courthouse, was eroding trust in the community. Yeah. And that is so critical to how we promote public safety that he asked City Attorney Lindsay Olson to hire an immigration attorney to help us with some of these issues. That time, I was doing a lot of legal advice around, how do we deal with certain things that came up. The Trump administration was trying to cut funding at that time based on whether we cooperated with ICE or not. So some of the same issues we have now were happening then. Then President Biden got elected, things changed. It was a much friendlier environment for immigrants. And really, that's when we started to get into community engagement programs. We started to think about some economic development programs we could promote. We really focused on increasing people becoming citizens of the United States. So we developed citizenship programs. We did all kinds of really interesting and fun, I call fun, engagement with the community. Because, you were out there with me at times. We'd be out parks and doing different events and just talking to people. So, and it was really felt like I was helping the community kind of stabilize and grow and take advantage of opportunities and contribute, which is, what they all wanted to do. But now that we have a second Trump administration, things, again, actually seem a little bit worse because they seem to be a little bit better at the things that we're doing in the past. So now I'm back, advising the mayor's office, advising city council, advising the city on how to deal with if ICE shows up at the city, or how do we enforce what's called our separation ordinance. And we can talk about that a little bit more. But, I'm doing a lot more lawyering, a lot less kind of community engagement and program development.
Why is educating the community about citizenship and legalization so important?
Well, I think there's a really negative narrative around immigrants that, since 2016, we continue to hear how, immigrants are just coming here to take from us. They're coming to hurt us. They're criminals. And in my experience, both as an immigration attorney and in the work I do now, and, as a kid growing up in New Jersey, that is so vastly different from what I've experienced with immigrant and refugee communities.
Right.
And I think it's really important that we educate the people who live in St. Paul to realize this isn't the true narrative. They're not here, to commit crimes. Yeah, do some of them commit crimes? Absolutely. In any population, you're gonna find people that do, bad things. I mean, there's always going to be a small percentage of people. But if you look at that, the percentage of people committing crimes in immigrant communities are actually much smaller than in normal U.S. populations because they're afraid they're going to get deported. And they tend to really tell their kids, you can't do this, or they tend themselves to be very strict. So I think it's really important to educate the community, our general population, about the true narrative of what immigrants, and all the contributions they make. But then it's also really important to educate our immigrant and refugee communities about their rights, because it's very easy for them to be taken advantage of and not be able to enforce their rights or know they even have rights, and then those rights get trampled on. So a big part of what we do now is also inform the community about, the immigrant refugee communities, about what their rights are.
What is the City of St. Paul's stance on deportation in its current form as it is being implemented at the federal level right now in 2025?
Well, I think immigration enforcement right now is kind of Trump administration's big thing, and they seem to be disregarding the Constitution and the laws and rules that are in place. And as you can see from the news, they're being sued very often and regularly, and the courts are kind of pushing back on the things they're trying to enforce. So it's an environment which is very much looking to deny people due process, to really not allow people to go to court, and really remove them from the United States as quickly as possible. And they're even deporting people to countries they're not even from. So it's a very, very dangerous time to be an immigrant or refugee in America.
What is St. Paul doing to help our immigration population feel safe? Tell us about your programs.
Sure. Like I said, back during the Biden administration, we were doing a lot of programming around developing and assisting people with naturalization, developing programs that help people to how to become a citizen. We were doing citizenship fairs where we talked about how to become a citizen, what was required, how you go about it. We entered into a contract with a legal service provider to assist St. Paul residents to apply for citizenship with the legal process. We created a new American Loan Fund in partnership with Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union and the City of Minneapolis, who we've also partnered with on the Citizenship Initiative. Between the two cities, we partner a lot, actually, in a lot of our programming, because our immigrant communities don't recognize, hey, this is St. Paul, or hey, this is Minneapolis. They may live in St. Paul, but they go shop on Lake Street. They may live in North Minneapolis, but they come shop at all the different among malls and food malls and stores in St. Paul. So there's a lot of moving around. They may live in one city but they worship in the other. They may worship in one city but they send their kids to school in the other. So there's a lot of movement. It it really is one community. So we have found that being a smaller program, as well as Minneapolis's program, we coming together, we were able to create a lot of synergy around our citizenship program, and now around knowing your rights and getting out information to people about knowing their rights and engaging with community in both cities together to make sure that people are learning about what should they do if ICE shows up at their house, what rights do they have, developing a plan should one of the family members gets deported, creating a family emergency plan so they know where all their documents are, what are we going to do about the house, the rent, the car payment, have all those things in order. Are we going to leave the kids here in someone else's charge? And how do we do that? How do we get that done? So that they have permission to help the kids with school, medical decisions, all those things. So those are the things we're working on now together as well.
That makes me so sad.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, to have to even think about your life being uprooted.
Yeah.
And having to come up with a plan, what do you do if this were to happen?
Yeah.
It's really, really sad times. What are your goals in supporting our refugee and undocumented families in St. Paul?
Well, I think, our goals as a city are to really try to keep people safe. We do that in a number of ways. Back in 2021, we were very lucky. We received a technical assistance grant from an initiative called Gateways for Growth. Gateways for Growth is an initiative of Welcoming America, an organization that works and assists communities to welcome immigrants, and the American Immigration Council, which is kind of the nonprofit branch of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. And they come together and they have this initiative called Gateways for Growth and helps local communities develop immigrant inclusion plans for their community. So they help you to do a whole bunch of community engagement, figure out who lives in your city. They provide you with all kinds of demographic data and economic data about the immigrants that live in your community, where they work, how much they earn, how much they pay in taxes, what public benefits they might use. So you have all this data about how they impact your community. And with that, they help you do community engagement with different organizations in different communities to figure out how the city can develop a plan for helping include immigrants in the life, the civic, economic, and cultural life of the city. We were very lucky, and to do the initiative, you need to have a partner, and our partner was the St. Paul Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
We were the lead, and Chamber was our partner. At the same time, the Minneapolis Chamber of Commerce got a Gateways for Growth initiative grant, and their partner was the city of Minneapolis. And we both started out doing our engagement on separate tracks. We were, two separate awards. We had the same technical advisors because they do it regionally. They give you technical advisors based on where you are in the country. And we started going forward. And this was right in the middle of COVID. And then right as we're starting our community engagement, George Floyd gets murdered. At that point, nobody wanted to talk to us. And the few people that were talking to us came back and said, Minneapolis is doing the same exact thing. They're asking us the same exact questions. They're asking us for the same exact things. We're basically doing double the work. So we got together with Minneapolis. The chambers got together, and then they brought the cities together and said, what if we go back to Gateways for Growth? Let's do one initiative together and create a report and do our inclusion report based on the Twin Cities. And that's what we did. And we came up with a report which was published in April of 2022, which is called The Journey to Belonging in the Twin Cities. And this is a map, it's a plan for how to do immigrant inclusion in our cities. And it's set up so we're looking at both cities in a kind of a dual track. So we have all this really great economic data, demographic data. Based on the study and the data we got, we know that 1 out of every 5 people that lives in St. Paul was born outside the United States. And we know that 1/3 of the entrepreneurs in this city are foreign born. So they have a big economic impact on our city. We know that over 120 languages are spoken in St. Paul homes. We're an incredibly diverse community. And it's beautiful. I mean, there's so many cultures, the music. I love food. We talked about being a vegan, but, I have a really hard time because I still love meat. I still love,
You can cheat.
I'm not really a vegan. I'm more, I'm a plant-based guy based on my health, but, I do. That's the problem, it's a little hard to go to these, different events and different communities, and they've got this amazing food. Food is the uniting force of all things.
Amen.
If you have a problem, I say just break out the food, and all of a sudden, That shifts the whole focus, and all of a sudden people become friends.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome. Is there anything that you want to add that you haven't been given a chance to share?
Yeah. So based on this report, we created an inclusion plan, and we had 4 pillars of areas. One of the areas was community safety. And there's a lot in the plan we haven't gotten to. When Lindsay Olson, the city attorney, saw this plan for the first time, she saw a draft of it. She said, Edmundo, how are you going to do this? This will take you like 7 years, 5 to 7 years to get through this, to do this. I said, well, it's a plan. We can take pieces of it. And, if you look at it, one of the pillars of the plan is community safety. And we took a small piece of that community safety pillar, and that's what we've been working on. And it involves what we call the separation ordinance. And it's really the big, important piece that we're doing today, especially with the Trump administration. And it's what's gotten us called a sanctuary city. We've been labeled a sanctuary city. It's because of our separation ordinance. And what our separation ordinance says is that the city of St. Paul enforces state law and city ordinances. We do not enforce federal law, specifically federal immigration law. We'll never ask someone about their immigration status. Our police don't ask about immigration status. You're never going to be not denied or asked about immigration status to receive a benefit or to participate in a program through the city. That ordinance was passed in 2024, but the first Trump administration, where we were being attacked for that ordinance as well, people, were just seeing all this enforcement and thought we were doing it, and we had to really go out and tell people and show people we weren't enforcing federal immigration law. Because what happens is people lose trust if they think you're going to turn them over to immigration. Because not only are people undocumented, but a lot of people lived in mixed status families, which means some people might have immigration status, some might not.
Right.
And the other thing is when people are enforcing immigration laws the way the federal government is, they're doing racial profiling. So between the racial profiling and people being afraid, they stop talking to law enforcement. They stop talking to our police. And in order for our police, as you know, to solve crimes and promote community safety, they have to have people talking to them.
Right.
So we have the separation ordinance. Everybody thinks we're against the immigration policies of the country. It's not. Our separation ordinance is really based on community safety. We want people to be able to talk to us. We need people to feel safe talking to our police. We need them to feel safe calling 911. If, my next door neighbor's house is on fire, I want to feel safe that I can call them and they're not going to come and ask me about my immigration status. So one, the separation ordinance is really about community safety. Number 2, the separation ordinance is about really not having local resources commandeered by the federal government.
Okay.
There's a constitutional principle called the anti-commandeering doctrine, which says that states have rights, any rights that are not through the Constitution made for the federal or given to the federal government are retained by the states. I mean, states have resources that they can use to enforce their rights and carry out their mission. And the federal government is prevented from commandeering those services. So in this case, it would be like the federal government coming in, taking over our police department, saying, you're now going to enforce federal immigration law and you're going to enforce our laws for us and help us arrest people. And
So with this, they can't do that.
right, with this ordinance, we're basically saying we enforce our laws and we focus on our priorities, not on enforcing federal immigration law. So really, those are the 2 reasons for the separation ordinance. And I think it's really important for people to understand that we're here. It's about public safety. It's about giving our police the resources and the ability to do the job they were hired to do, which is protect us and help us be safe in our own community.
Edmundo, that piece right there, this last piece, that it's all important, but that is really, really important. And that's why I wanted you to come on, because I think it's important that we get the word out that it's okay for people to feel safe.
Absolutely.
It's okay.
Absolutely.
Tell us real quick about the Twin Cities Immigration Forum that you have.
Sure. The Twin Cities Immigration Forum is a forum that I host in partnership with the Minneapolis Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs. Director Michelle Rivero and I have been hosting that forum since the beginning of the Biden administration in 2021. And it was a place where we brought in experts and people from the community to explain all the changes that were going on during the Biden administration. And over time, it kind of morphed and changed. And it really became a place where we come and we talk about all kinds of issues that impact immigrant and refugee communities in the Twin Cities. We have it every second and fourth Thursday of the month from 4:30 to 6. It is a virtual forum. It's on Teams, and people can just come on, and we have, guest speakers. I know you were on last week talking about the podcast and Office of Neighborhood Safety. We have all kinds of local government people come in, talk about different programs that are going on. We have lawyers coming on talking about different developments in immigration law. We've had whole forums where we just talk about chemical dependency and youth chemical dependency and the programs that are available, and talking about trauma and how to treat trauma. So we've delved into all kinds of areas, housing. So it's a really good mix of different local folks talking about the problems that impact immigrant and refugees, but also that impact the general community. So
where do you go to sign up to get on like the mailing list for that?
They can email me, and I'm happy to provide my email address, and we can get them on the email list. Or if they go to the Minneapolis Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs website, they also have a link for people to kind of sign up they can get a link to get an email to sign up for the forum.
Sounds good. Do you want to do your email address?
Sure. My email address is Edmundo, my name, edmundo.lijo@ci.stpaul.mn.us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The City of St. Paul is working to rehabilitate, intervene, and provide safer neighborhoods. If you'd like to learn more about immigration resources, please go to stpaul.gov/immigration-resources. If you'd like to learn more about Community First Public Safety and the Office of Neighborhood Safety, please visit us at stpaul.gov/ONS.